I never feel like I can live up to that intro.
I know it's really a high bar to
It's a high
set
bar.
for a guy, especially on a Saturday afternoon.
So Pale Blue Mama Atheist, Manda and Math Pig are still going at it for another hour, I think.
I believe so,
or something, and they have hit their mark. And
yeah, they hit their mark early
and went above it.
Mark, hit it, and then set another mark.
Yeah, and so she has everything she needs to get herself out of the situation she's in. And I kind of wanted to stop over there and encourage her to get the hell out of there right now. Before
I know that's the feeling I get. She said something about keeping a can of mace and and a knife near her at all times. And I thought, no, get out, get out. If anything, rent yourself a U-Haul, come to the house, fill it up, and then go to a motel somewhere.
Yep. Yeah. Anyway, so we have one more section left, and it is a big one.
Well, I kind of like this paper. It's very educational, and it does a good job of raising questions about being too literal with the mechanical view of the cell. So I think we'll enjoy getting through it, and I know our listeners will. Our listeners love this stuff. They eat it up because they're smart.
They come in droves. I mean,
they do. They flock in from who knows where.
Yeah. I've been getting like 100,000 of 3 million views on these papers.
The views are enormous.
Yep, just enormous. And like I got 2 likes. I mean, it's just amazing what's happening here.
Remember, refresh your browser.
I know, I got to refresh my browser. What? That just happened. Oh, 3 likes.
See there.
I got to write home. I got to write home to mom.
It's an increase of 50%. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm going to write home to mom about this shit. We're rocking it. Awesome. So, you want to go ahead and start reading? I need to make a comment over on another channel.
Okay, and I'm going to say thank you for being our first like, Doubting Thomas. You get 1,000 speed bumps.
Well, should we mention that Decil Drace is going to destroy our channel?
Yeah, he's going to destroy our channel on his channel, so be looking out for that. Something about PG and biogenesis. So go for it, Decil. Thank you for the destruction. Okay, metaphor number 4, molecular motor. The final engineering metaphor I shall examine is the concept of molecular motor, which is used to characterize proteins responsible for transporting cargo to specific destinations inside the cells. Although it is generally regarded as a subclass of the more general notion of molecular machine, its usage poses its own set of distinct challenges that merit separate attention. For a start, it could be argued that the concept of motor does not necessarily imply the concept of machine. If we understood a motor simply as an entity that imparts motion, which is actually the first definition of motor listed in the Oxford English Dictionary, then there would be nothing metaphorical about referring to kinesin, dynein, and myosin as motors. In practice, however, the designation molecular motor in molecular biology tends to carry clear connotations of machines and of mechanical engineering. When proteins capable of directional movement are described as molecular motors in the literature, what is typically implied is that they resemble macroscopic mechanical motors with regard to their structure and to their operation. In fact, it is not unusual for them to be compared to automobiles. Both, it is argued, consume fuel to power their motion. Moreover, Vail and Milligan remark that just as in an automobile, the site that processes the chemical fuel in a molecular motor must be linked through through intermediate components to the site that ultimately generates the motion. In the automobile, the breakdown of the chemical fuel is coupled to the stroking of a piston, which in turn is linked through the crankshaft and transmission to turning of the wheels. A somewhat analogous situation for translating chemical changes into mechanical motions exists in molecular motors. Molecular motors. Specifically, the claim is that the energy released from the chemical fuel is used to induce a large amplitude conformational change in the motor protein, which generates a mechanical force, a power stroke, that drives the molecule forward relative to a polymeric track. Sometimes this power stroke is compared to the mechanical release of viscoelastic spring. In the case
Visco.
of
Visco.
okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
It
I'm
was
sorry
a
about
moving target.
Yeah, well, yeah, I moved it off the screen, so I apologize.
In the case of, did you want to say anything about it?
Oh, just that these early molecules, they have to do with a couple of different things. One is intermediate filaments and connections are closely related. The things that stick cells together and stick things on the inside of the cell to the cell membranes, like the things that stick DNA to the membrane of the nucleus, for instance, even though that came a lot later. Those things are related, and they seem like repeat sequences of inside of each protein. So if you look at the papers and you start to look at the structure of these things, there's a lot of information that shows possible evolutionary pathways for cells that just started twitching a little bit and ended up being able to move across an environment or move across a gradient. And if you imagine natural selection would prefer something that could move around, as you know, in a changing and competitive environment. So it isn't a complete fantasy to see how these things evolved. Anyway, I wanted to say that. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Good. I like when it makes sense.
It beats the opposite.
It doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, you might as well enjoy it while you can.
I can. Okay.
In the case of kinesin, which has dimeric legs that alternatively attach to tubulin, the repetitive power strokes result in directed movement that makes the protein appear like a tiny robot walking along the macrotubule, and this is indeed the way in which its motion is usually represented in diagrams and animations. Once again, the problem with these familiar mechanical models inspired by our everyday experience of the macroscopic world is that they fail to recognize the drastically different physical conditions that characterize the macroscopic world. When we are walking, the two major physical forces at play are gravity and inertia. Most of the motive power is expended by repeated cycles of acceleration as the foot that was in touch with the ground is brought forward to a position in front of the torso. Friction plays only a minor role as far as the energetics are concerned. In the microscopic world, however, the impact of inertia, which is proportional to volume and mass, is completely dwarfed by the impact of friction, which is proportional to surface area. The high viscous friction or drag of water at the molecular scale means that for bacterium, swimming in water feels like what swimming in molasses would feel to us. Moreover, although we might just about be able to imagine what it would feel like to be immersed in molasses, it is much harder to imagine another feature of aqueous solutions that cells and their macromolecular components experience by virtue of being so small. The molasses that surrounds them is furiously moving about as a result of the thermal agitation of the water molecules. We have to remember.
Okay.
My eyebrows, I can't find them now. We have to remember that a motor protein does not experience water as a fluid continuum in the way that we do, but as an extremely dense array of rapidly moving particles that are constantly striking it from all sides. Even a freak hailstorm, as Jumian writes, does not come to the tempestuous bombardment that it does not come close to the tempestuous bombardment that is routine in the molecular world, but the effects can be analogous.
Okay.
So imagine immersing the inside of General Motors in molasses and then having to produce your dang cars and stuff.
Except the molasses is like a freak hailstorm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, hard to imagine. Okay, so I'll read a bit.
Sure.
From a physical perspective, it is difficult to understand how a motor protein could possibly walk in a directed manner by means of mechanical cycles of precisely coordinated power strokes. Once we realize that, for molecules moving deterministically is like trying to walk in a hurricane. The forces propelling a particle along the desired path are puny in comparison to the random forces exerted by the environment. Recently, a growing number of researchers have come to appreciate that if we are to understand the way in which motor proteins move, we need to imagine living in a world where a Richter 9 earthquake raged continuously. Interesting.
That's an interesting analogy.
So how exactly do motor proteins manage to move directionally in such a turbulent and chaotic environment? There are two alternatives. When they do that, I like to highlight how many alternatives there are. Mm-hmm. Motor proteins must either work with the raging Brownian storm that engulfs them or fight against it. And in light of the above considerations, the former appears to be the preferable option. This has led to the hypothesis that motor proteins are not mechanical motors, but Brownian motors. And we touched a little bit on that in the last paper. Instead of moving directionally by generating a large mechanical force that overpowers the stochastic effects of Brownian motion, motor proteins are thought to move by biasing the existing Brownian motion in a particular direction. So there again, and not many people see this, we have a statistical averaging inside of living cells. Mm-hmm. And that happens with all these enzymatic pathways and everything else, that it is not a precise deterministic system or machine, but rather it is a statistical trend toward some positive end of the spectrum, right? So it's kind of the same thing with this Brownian motors that they have. So figure 2.5, let's go look at that. Let's just go look at that. Yeah, this is the one from the last paper where they show basically this is an energy well or energy diagram, and things bounce around and bounce around here. You can't see my cursor, damn it. And then they fall into the next slot and the next slot and the next slot. So there is no evidence that those illustrations of cells are actually what cells are doing. Is kind of the big point here. Where the hell was I?
Right up there, which says figure 0.25. Right.
Illustrates how Brownian motors harness stochastically to move directionally. According to this model, motor proteins use the energy released from chemical fuel they consume to switch between two alternative conformational states on and off with different energy profiles. Okay, hang on a second. Yeah. When the motor proteins are on, their energy landscape has a jagged, sawtooth shape, and consequently, random collisions jostle them overwhelmingly to the right, where they get trapped in the nearest energy minima, and that shows on that illustration. When the motor proteins are off, their energy landscape has a flat shape, and consequently, random collisions cause them to perform random walks. with equal probabilities of moving to the left or to the right of their initial position. Thus, by periodically switching between on and off states through the repeated consumption of chemical energy, and by taking advantage of incessant Brownian motion that characterizes their environment, motor proteins are able to move directionally in the absence of mechanical forces. And now ATP plays a big role in this stuff. And that seems to be phosphoric acid and the formation of ATP and the charging of proteins, which causes this conformation in their geometry. Okay, came very, very early in life, some 3.5 billion years ago, or maybe 4. So, anyway, there again, we people who are still looking for abiogenesis might see things like that, whereas people that reject it out of hand never will. Political statement over. Okay. When trying to comprehend how a motor protein moves along a cytoskeletal tract, the assumption has long been that at least some of the mechanical principles that have been derived by the engineers who analyze the machines of our common experience are likely to be relevant. But if the Brownian motor model of intercellular transport is even partially correct, then this attitude is bound to lead researchers astray. And that is the whole point that Nicholson has been making for a while now. Due to the huge disparity in size, mechanical motors and Brownian motors operate according to fundamentally different principles. The former use energy to drive motion, where the latter use energy to restrain it. Interesting. So, I don't know if I read that right. Given energy, it's going to, I don't know if I read that right. Anyway, hopefully he'll clarify. The former move despite stochastic fluctuations. The latter move because of them. Okay. The structure of the former must be hard and rigid, while that of the latter can be soft and plastic. In addition, Brownian motors are far more efficient than mechanical motors because they convert chemical energy directly into work. Now, that's an interesting point. Without using heat or electrical energy as intermediates. An important upshot of relying on stochasticity for their operation is that the directional movements of Brownian motors are purely statistical occurrences. The timing of their individual journeys, as well as their precise trajectories, is non-deterministic and therefore impossible to predict. Every Brownian motor performs a unique dance despite moving in the same general direction. Overall, it is clear that attempts to draw on the properties of macroscopic motors to shed light on the properties of microscopic ones, such as the motor proteins inside the cell, are more likely to cloud and obfuscate than they are to clarify and illuminate. Done for a minute.
Jay demands brownies. He said he heard somebody say brownies.
Yeah, okay. They're on the way. Just, listen to your doorbell. DoorDash is delivering brownies. In fact, a real treat for you guys. I actually got John Maddox to deliver them for you. Oops. I'm a bad man. Huh?
I was reading the side chat. I need to pay attention.
Scott Duke.
Yeah, how did molecular biology come to neglect the impact of scale? How did it happen? Well, let's take a look and see. Before bringing this chapter to a close, it is worth pausing for a moment to consider the intriguing historical puzzle that the examination I provided suggests. A growing number of molecular biologists are beginning to question the value of using metaphors and models imported from electronic and mechanical engineering, and this undoubtedly reflects an increasing awareness of the importance of adjusting explanations of molecular and cellular phenomena to the scale in which they take place. I'm going to pause here and make a comment / maybe question, but I don't recall that he provided any information about surveys of biologists or whatever, kind of indicating if people are becoming more increasingly aware of that distinction. So that might be a drawback of this paper, or this. It's more of an essay, but
Yeah, let's see. A growing number. So he could have, that could be like anecdotal, him just reading a bunch of papers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want him to go full SFP
Well,
and start talking about the thousands and thousands without a warranted.
well, the interesting thing is one of the big champions of creationists is Dennis Noble, and Dennis Noble is not a Christian, not a creationist, but he is. He is a. They mentioned him last night on John's show with Saigar, and he has this book. I forget what it is, The Dance of Life or something like that, where he talks about the teleological nature, and I think he uses the word teleonomical, which is different than teleological. That's sort of the
I've heard that, but not really looked into the distinction.
But anyway, he is one of the people that are pushing for this kind of thing to rethink our paradigms, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if Dennis Noble specifically goes after what Nicholson is going after, but he certainly is singing the same song, whether they all know it or not. So anyway, okay. So where are we? Are you on the odd thing?
Yeah, the odd thing about this is that it has taken molecular biologists so long to start taking the importance of scale seriously. Haldane was not a lone voice when he drew attention to the importance of size in his essay of 1926. The impact of scale was widely recognized at the time, remaining an important consideration in biological discussions during the first half of the 20th century. Take, for example, the second chapter of the revised edition of Thomson's celebrated magnum opus on growth and form. It is titled On Magnitude, and it represents a wonderfully detailed analysis of the numerous ways in which physical forces at various scales affect the lives of organisms of different sizes. In fact, its final paragraph eloquently articulates the basic thesis I have sought to defend in this chapter. The world of man is ruled by gravitation, but in the world where the bacillus lives, gravitation is forgotten, and the viscosity of the liquid, the resistance defined by Stokes' law, the molecular shocks of the Brownian movement, doubtless also the electric charges of the ionized medium, make up the physical environment and have their potent and immediate influence on the organism. The predominant factors are no longer those of our scale. We have come to the edge of a world of which we have no experience, and where all our preconceptions must be recast. That's really well written.
And that's from 1942. So they were even back then. But that was back before we had fancy computer animations. And
this makes me want to go back and watch Inner Space, I think it was called. With I think Meg Ryan and Dennis Quaid.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of those, let's shrink them down and inject them in the body and see not only what the special effects were like, but how well they got the microscopic world of the human body right.
Was that the movie that was based? I think it was on an Isaac Asimov story or book. I think about shrinking people down and injecting them into the bloodstream or something.
I don't know if it was an Isaac Asimov book, but I know there was that one with Raquel Welch back in the 60s.
Yeah, I thought that
Amazing Journey, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was, something like that. I think it was based on Isaac Asimov's book, but or a short story by Asimov, and I'm not entirely sure. Which is a segue into noting that Apple TV, or is it Disney? No, Disney is going to do the Foundation series, Asimov, the robot.
That would be interesting because science has advanced so much. So you're going to have to make a lot of adjustments to be believable, to accommodate the willing suspension of disbelief in that. But yeah, the Foundation series I thought was pretty darn epic.
Danny has a comment here. What is DJN? I'm not picking up on that.
I guess Nicholson.
Oh, rejects a dispositional account of function for one that preserves the normativity Is that what you meant? In function, why would you read this if you disagree with its fundamental assumption? I don't disagree with this particular paper. Now, on his normativity stuff, you'd have to point me specifically to one of his papers. I think he did, 2 papers in that series of some 20 papers on normativity in biology. But, yeah, there is no normativity except from our point of view, where you could come up with something that, decides to do something or has intent or intention. We could argue about that, Danny. Yeah, I thought you meant normativity. Okay. So
I don't know, Norm, or where he fits in on this. These remarks were written over 3/4 of a century ago, so why do they now seem even more relevant than ever? Or to put it slightly differently, how did we come to forget what we used to know? It is obviously not possible to do justice to such a complex question here. In what follows, I only wish to propose and briefly discuss a factor that might have contributed to molecular biology's neglect of scale during the second half of the 20th century, namely the influence of Schrodinger's argument regarding the stability of the gene laid out in his famous little book, What is Life, published in 1944.
Yep.
Have there been any books by that topic or that title since then? That seems like a very good
Probably.
kind of keeping on rolling dialogue on. Like all science classics, What is Life is far more often cited than read. But if one bothers to go back and actually read how Schrodinger arrives at his well-known characterization of genes as aperiodic crystals, the striking thing about his argument is that it is based primarily on considerations of size and scale. Schrodinger begins his book by noting that atoms, as a consequence of being so small, are incapable of exhibiting orderly behavior on their own because they are continuously subject to stochastic effects of thermal agitation at any temperature above absolute zero. This is why physical laws are statistical in nature. Order and regularity can only emerge upon consideration of enormous numbers of atoms or molecules which collectively display macroscopic patterns of order. Schrodinger calls this the order from disorder principle, and he discusses several physical examples to illustrate it. One of them, in figure 2.6, you want to look at that real quick?
Oh, we'll just get her to the top here. I think we can do both at the same time.
Oh, yeah. One of them, shown in figure 2.6, concerns what happens when you fill a glass vessel with fog consisting of minute droplets. Over time, the fog gradually...
Order from disorder principle sinks to the bottom.
Sinks to the bottom with a oh, you want to read?
Oh, you want to read one of Schrodinger's own illustrations of the order from disorder principle. The vessel on the left shows the regular orderly sinking of fog over time. The arrow on the right delineates the irregular and disorderly trajectory of individual droplets. Okay, so here we have, this is a classic Brownian motion. The law-like behavior of the fog reflects, okay, here we go. Now this is the statistical thing. The law-like nature of the behavior of the fog reflects a statistical average of the collective behavior of all droplets of which it is composed. So you can imagine this Brownian motion here with each of these individual particles, and that's just the basis of thermodynamics, is that it behaves statistically and probabilistically. Okay, you can...
And so the bird's eye view of it looks different from the
right.
zoom in on the individuals.
Yep, you can finish paragraph.
But it sinks to the bottom of well-defined velocity determined by the viscosity of the air and the size and specific gravity of the droplets. Still, if you observe one of the droplets under the microscope, you find that it does not permanently sink with constant velocity, but instead performs highly irregular movements, Brownian motion, as a consequence of thermal agitation. So although the behavior of any given droplet is stochastic and disorderly as it sinks, the behavior of the fog as a whole is regular and orderly. In general, the larger the number of the participating particles in a physical process, the more accurate the lawful prediction of its behavior. This is what mathematicians refer to as the law of large numbers.
Now, you could see that as apes who not long ago just came down from the trees, that we might see this statistical behavior moving in one direction without really understanding what is going on at the atomic level and the quantum level. And we might say, that shows intention, just like us, right?
Yeah.
You see the little trick there, Danny? You see it, Danny? Hopefully you'll see it. Oh my God. Oh, standing for truth is here.
Now, a naive physicist, Schrodinger writes, might be forgiven for thinking it self-evident that the astounding regularity and orderliness displayed by an organism must also be based on a macroscopic law-like patterns of behavior exhibited by large ensembles of interacting molecules. However, Schrodinger continues, this expectation, far from being trivial, is wrong. Want me to continue?
I can go. His reasoning is as follows. The order of an organism is essentially determined by its genes, and we know from experimental studies that a gene molecule is not much larger than a few thousand atoms. This number, Schrodinger observes, is much too small from the law of large numbers point of view to entail an orderly and lawful behavior according to statistical physics. And I do have a cat appearing in front of the document. Because genes are so tiny, they should not be able to reliably code for heritable traits, given that they are firmly in the grip of thermal agitation. And yet we know for a fact that genes are remarkably stable, with a durability or permanence that borders upon the miraculous. So how do we reconcile the small size of genes with their extraordinary stability in the face of constant stochastic perturbations? Schrodinger's answer. Do you want to comment?
I was going to say, no, I was being stupid.
Oh.
So continue.
Okay. Schrodinger's answer is that the genetic material must have a rigid, solid state structure, top of cat head, of a crystal. I'm reading off my cat. As only then would it be able to effectively withstand the relentless disruptive effects of Brownian motion. But unlike normal crystals, which display regular and periodic configurations, the structure of genetic material must be aperiodic, so that it contain within it the code script that specifies the organization of the organism. Somebody said code script, calling all Maddox.
That's right. Let's get out our HTML coding book.
Schrodinger refers to the kind of order displayed by organisms as a manifestation of an order from order principle, which he explicitly contrasts to the aforementioned order from disorder principle described by statistical mechanics. Interestingly, he argues that in this crucial respect, organisms are analogous to machines, as the latter likewise exhibit rigid, solid-state structures capable of resisting random fluctuations, enabling them to operate in an orderly way. Indeed, Schrodinger ends What is Life by declaring that the clue to the understanding of life is that it is based on a pure mechanism, a clockwork that also hinges upon a solid, the aperiodic crystal forming the hereditary substance, largely withdrawn from disorder of heat motion. Interesting. Okay. So you want to go on?
Sure.
I'll fight with my cat.
Schrodinger's deliberations led him to conclude that the solid-state crystal structure of the genetic material renders it impervious to the physical forces that exert the greatest effect at the microscopic scale. Genes behave as if they were at absolute zero, as they do not appear to be affected by thermal agitation. And although he does not go into detail, his argument implies that the order encoded in the aperiodic crystal must somehow be reliably transmitted to the rest of the cell's components, especially to the proteins, so that these can individually express it through their functions in a way that similarly eludes or overcomes the raging Brownian storm of the molecular realm. What
Now,
I've suggested here. Oh,
hang
you
on a
got something
second.
to say?
Yeah.
Or does Loki have something to say? We haven't heard from Loki. We need to get a cat's eye view of
He's
things.
looking at me like I'm absolutely crazy because I'm reading. I don't know what he thinks. Anyway, let's see. So what I was going to comment on is that this was so Schrodinger was trying to figure out how this happened, right? And so he was trying. So he understood that there was this Brownian stochastic effect. Yet we have this DNA which codes for proteins, and how does it get? How does it do that? So he imagined this aperiodic crystal or this solid that behaves as if it's at absolute zero. But what he didn't know is of all the other intermediate steps and proteins, all behaving stochastically, that also make the translation of DNA a statistical problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if that's where Nicholson is going, but I suggest it may be. So.
Okay, so we're on the first full paragraph.
Okay, we're gonna have to get Danny in here after we're done. So, how far should we go today?
I say we just go for broke, get her done.
Get her done.
Yeah.
Well, got it. Danny's itching for a fight here.
He is itching for a fight. He's in a mood today.
If he's in one of his moods, it ain't gonna work. But if he can bring us a paper, anyway. Okay,
yeah,
so
let's not get distracted by the side chat. Although they're lovely people, and I'm so glad James Downard's here. I've seen Gutset Gibbon making comments. Of course, Danny's here, and Doubting Thomas, and Mom's here. You got to love it when Mom shows up.
Mom's here. And Nestling is here somewhere, and he linked the paper, which I'm very distracted by because I want to pull that paper up.
What I want to suggest here is that the influence of this idea, which is central to Schrodinger's argument, did we read that already?
Oh, this is the one that Danny referenced, right? Organisms not equal to machines.
No. I'm not looking at links.
Oh, okay. I am.
Sorry. That I'm reading, and I want to make sure I haven't read it already.
No, you haven't read what I want.
Okay.
I don't think.
Okay, so. Schrodinger's argument and what it's like. So here's the central idea: is responsible, at least in part, for molecular biology's subsequent neglect of the importance of scale. Just as Schrodinger had done with genes, molecular biologists went on to focus on the structure of proteins and other macromolecular assemblies using methods such as X-ray crystallography, drawing attention to their crystal-like stability and rigidity, emphasizing their functional specificity, and ignoring the chaotic, destabilizing influences of their surroundings. One can easily see how this attitude might have encouraged the appeal to conceptual models borrowed from the macroscopic domains, such as the 4 engineering metaphors I have considered in this chapter. Indeed, Schrodinger himself, as I have just discussed, acknowledged the deep resemblance between organisms and machines with respect to the kind of order they exhibit, as well as to the negligible impact of the physical environment on their operation. Some fairly compelling evidence for this hypothesis can be found by considering the case of Monod, one of the main intellectual architects of the molecular biology revolution. The reason is that Monod appears to have changed his mind about the nature of biological order, partially as a consequence of reading What is Life, which he regarded as a work of genius. Though initially committed earlier in his career to a statistical and non-deterministic understanding of biological regularities consistent with the aforementioned order from disorder principle, Monod later came to regard the order of the cell as a product of the static, clockwork-like precision of its macromolecular components. The whole trend of modern molecular biology, Monod declared in a 1958 lecture, makes it every day clearer that structural stability and rigidity rather than dynamicity are the most essential and characteristic properties of the typical cellular macromolecules. Monod also commented in his notes that for the same lecture where he explicitly mentioned Schrodinger in a parenthetical remark, that even when examining large macromolecules for example, ribosomes, and complex subcellular processes, for example, protein synthesis, or maybe, in other words, I can't remember which is which. One can confidently regard the disruptive effects of stochasticity, okay, there we go, due to the imposing stability and rigidity of the participating molecules.
Some of these things are really a challenge to read. Anyway.
I know. Maybe I'll be better at enunciating things as a result of these kinds of exercises.
Yeah, before we move too fast here, I think the first molecule proteins that they illuminated the structure of were hemoglobins. And I have some of the early works. And one of the big things with proteins is that some proteins could not be crystallized. So they were screwed. They couldn't find the structure. So they had to go through this whole process of cooling and crystallizing proteins in order to examine them with x-rays and find out what their structure was, right? And that process may have done us a bit of a disservice in that we were looking at a frozen structure rather than what was really happening in the cell. So I think where he's heading here is that Monod and Schrodinger sort of bled into that mistake and gave us this machine-like idea, which may not actually be the case.
Right.
Are we at the beginning of 62?
Actually, there's this whole quote up here.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
The protein synthesizing process appears to work with very high precision, and the concept of molecular macroheterogeneity due to errors or fluctuations in this process appears unwarranted. Putting it otherwise, even in the formation of such a very large and complex molecule, in other words, a protein, the synthesizing system, in other words, the ribosome, appear to work mechanically, like a clock or a precision machine tool, rather than statistically.
Okay, I will try to read again. Oh, we're almost at the end. By the time, I think we're almost at the end.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we are.
Luckily, this guy has an extensive reference.
He does. By the time he wrote his renowned treatise on molecular biology, Chance and Necessity. Oh, I think I have that. I would be surprised if I didn't own that. Had become even more forceful in his dismissal of stochastic environmental effects, noting that a living being's structure owes almost nothing to the action of outside forces, but everything from its overall shape down to its tiniest detail, interactions within the object itself. Monod note that this is precisely the view that I have repeatedly challenged over the course of this chapter. Okay. In any case, more historical research is needed to corroborate this interpretation. Still, I cannot resist making the provocative observation that if the proposed hypothesis is correct, we shall be forced to draw the utterly paradoxical conclusion that one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century was responsible for making several generations of molecular biologists forget about the importance of physical forces on the phenomena they study. Now, that is an interesting little statement here.
Yeah.
We shall be forced to conclude that they fucked up.
Well, it's one of the results of being too in love with your paradigms. However, if you're not devoted to a paradigm, would you have been as fruitful in the accomplishments of research that you made using that paradigm? But then eventually, now this is according to to Thomas Kuhn, and I don't know how closely I'm sticking to his thesis, but once that paradigm shifts, more fruitful investigation can take place. But then the people who are just really in love and almost reifying and concretizing a metaphor, an extended metaphor, essentially, may fall prey to other problems.
Oh my God, I got to put my blood pressure cuff on. Do you see what Danny just said? I need to check my blood pressure.
Spandrels, isn't that an old
Spandrels.
country music group or something from way in the 50s? Oh well.
Wait.
Despite its importance in the historical development of biological thought, the machine conception of the organism is deeply problematic from an ontological point of view. In this chapter, I've drawn on the insights that Haldane offered in a classic essay from the 1920s to propose a new philosophical argument against this conception that is particularly relevant for the current work in cell and molecular biology, and which I have called the argument from scale. This states that owing to their minuscule size, cells and their macromolecular components are subject to drastically different physical conditions compared with macroscopic objects like machines, and that using machine metaphors to explain microscopic phenomena is consequently more likely to obscure and deceive than it is to elucidate and enlighten. I have illustrated this argument by analyzing 4 central conceptual models in molecular biology that were originally imported from electronic and mechanical engineering: genetic programs, cellular circuitry, molecular machine, and molecular motor, and by showing that their explanatory deficiencies ultimately derive from their neglect of the impact of scale. Once scale is seriously taken into account, it becomes hard to defend the theoretical adequacy of these models, which, of course, is not to say that they cannot sometimes serve useful heuristic purposes as convenient, experimentally traceable idealizations. Although there will be many that will continue to believe that the engineering sciences, particularly electronic and control engineering, are likely to have an ever-increasing and pervasive impact on molecular biology, the fact is that the physical dimensions of the cell and the milieu it finds itself in impose fundamental constraints on what is possible and what is not, both structurally and functionally. The rigidity, stability, and deterministic precision that we typically associate with the machines of our macroscopic world simply cannot exist in the messy, turbulent, and chaotic world that cells and molecules inhabit. The clockwork mechanism of the cell, if that is what we insist on calling it, is built not of precisely engineered solid cogs, but of vague and uncertain particles whose generation, diffusion, and reaction cannot provide any precision. Perhaps the most serious obstacle in coming to terms with molecular and cellular phenomena is the lack of a good analogy from our daily experience. It is for this reason that we should learn to trust what physics tells us about the molecular realm, despite being strange and counterintuitive, over the more familiar and comforting picture that traditional appeals to engineering have tended to suggest. You know, I'm thinking too that some of the videos that I've seen that show, you know, these giant microscopes and the different types of microscopes that they can use that show pretty much videos of the cell going through its motion in 3D, I think kind of bridge the gap in that ability to appreciate what's going on inside of cell.
Yeah, and this video that we did of this guy that was actually getting some reliable pictures of what's actually going on is interesting. There's some new technology we'll be seeing over the next 10 years might reveal some surprises for us, which is kind of cool. So I am now looking at chat and this paper, and Loki, I think, Loki, you need to go catch a mousey. There's a mousey outside, and you need to go catch it because you're pissing me off. Anyway, should we open it up to chat?
Let's do that. Let's send in some invites, and there's a lot of people I'd love to have just kind of flood in here and give us their viewpoint on things. And then I want to see if we can persuade RJ to start a weekly Roman Empire hour.
Oh, yes. We should do that. Let me see here. Do I have to cue the Benny Hill music yet? And first to appear is Danny. Danny is the brave one. Hey, Danny.
Hello.
I'm working on a thing here.
Hey, Danny, that was a very fun and interesting talk you had with Brenda yesterday.
Oh, did you like it?
I did.
I
enjoyed the chat, the ideas that it brought up in me, as well as And you and Brenda?
Yeah, Brenda's an old character. Like, we've known each other like 4 years or something like that.
Where was that talk at?
On my channel.
We should link that because we're talking about it, right? You
It's a
got
good
the link? Video details.
Sorry, what was that? Oh, it was about. So she went on Talk Heathen, and they were, I don't know, discussing what philosophy was, and we reviewed the video and what of that exchange.
Oh, on Murphy's show, Eric Murphy's show. Was that Talk Heathen? Yeah.
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 Eric
Okay.
Murphy and V. LaBianca.
So when was that? When was that? When did she go on that show?
I think that was all yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Well, no, they come on Sundays.
They come out on Sunday.
Yeah, so it had to be on a Sunday.
Really?
Yeah, but your video came out yesterday.
Because why did she tell me yesterday? It was only a few hours prior to our discussion, but that I was getting the information from her.
Oh, yeah.
Must have been like a week ago. Okay, so this other paper by Nicholson is from what year did he write this one? This is 2013. Yeah, and the one we just read was from, what was that? What year was it?
I know his views haven't changed.
2020. So 2020. So you mentioned a footnote. Was that at the very end of the paper?
That was in the middle of the paper.
In the middle of the paper. So it was footnote number 5?
5, right. Do you want to look at it really briefly?
Yeah.
Are you going to share, or do you want me to share the screen?
I'm sharing. I like sharing. I share a lot. Whoops.
On airplanes, I overshare.
Okay, so but the problem is,
read. Do you want me to read out the 5th, or do you want to read it out? The 5th note.
Yeah, I'll let you read it, but I'm trying to figure out how I can make it bigger.
Look at the top. Yeah. Look at the top with the plus sign.
Yeah.
Or I can do it if you want.
Well, you can make it. Okay, you can go like that.
Yeah.
Right.
But then just hit the plus sign. Oh, unless it's okay.
Yeah, this PDF viewer, unless you have a better PDF viewer, this one, if you hit the plus sign, puts it outside of the margins.
Oh, I see. But then you can just take out the left side, the bar on the left. But
this bar you can't get rid of.
Really, you can. I mean, oh really?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it's still readable.
Yeah. Okay. Let me go find it again. Okay. So I'm way the hell down on 10. Okay, 8. Here we go, 5. Okay, you want to go ahead and read it?
Yeah. The literature on function is huge, and there are numerous accounts. It's so hard to read on offer. Here I adopt the organizational account of function, which has been recently articulated and seemingly independently by a number of authors. He gives a slew of them. The motivation for adopting this view stems from the familiar problems of the two classical accounts. The ideological, I think that I'm pronouncing that right, but someone can correct me, and the dispositional. I take the dispositional account of function, okay, just so you know. And I think you do too.
Okay.
The ideological account, grounding function and selected effects, is too narrow to accommodate function talk in areas of biology not directly concerned with historical explanations such as physiology, development in molecular biology. Whereas the dispositional account, by interpreting any means-end relation as functional, so like the idea is that if something's functional, then that has a causal tendency towards survival or reproduction or particular effect. You know, we're talking about the cause-effect relations when we're talking about dispositional accounts of function. It's too broad to capture the normative character of functional attributions in biology. The merit of the organizational account is that it explains the normativity of functions. I can't read it. Whilst focusing on contributions of function bearers, like the dispositional account. Yeah, that explains, because he, in this paper or maybe in another one, he distinguishes intrinsic and extrinsic. I think it doesn't say purposefulness, but purposive. I think that's the word he uses. So the whole thing is just built on his organizational account of function, which is to understand things in terms of part-whole relations. I think that's how I take the organizational account of function. But no, the whole thing is built on a very problematic notion, which is that normativity is sort of embedded in biology. Now, I think function, it's okay to use the language of function in biology, but most people, like Alex Rosenberg, which is the author that I would suggest to you, who takes a more dispositional account of functionality, like he doesn't start with that assumption, right? And so the whole dialectic between machines and organisms, or telos, and like descriptive states, like non-teleologic views of what's going on in science, for him, it's just answered by a dispositional account of functionality. So he completely omits the teleological views, whereas Nicholson wants to hold on to it for some reason.
Just looked at the menu and found a hide sidebar. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what the controversy is here. So,
well, you reject normativity with respect to its application in biology and the natural sciences.
Well, how would you apply normativity to, say, the functioning of a cell?
I don't apply them. I take a dispositional account of functionality.
Okay. So there is no normativity.
Right. You and I agree on something, right? That when you're doing science, normativity doesn't enter the picture. Okay.
Right.
But so Nicholson disagrees.
Well, if he's pushing back against a machine analogy, how is he disagreeing? He was talking about
because he distinguishes intrinsic and extrinsic function, right? And so the idea of his organisms are not machines is built on this notion of intrinsic and extrinsic function. He even actually cites Kant and non-naturalists in this case, which is absolutely crazy. I just don't. I think the whole thing is founded on a faulty assumption. You should read Rosenberg instead. He's more in line with your views.
Rosenberg?
Yeah, Alex Rosenberg.
I'm writing it down. Okay. So now what I got out of the last paper is that he was looking for instance, in Monad's bit about the fog, he was looking at the appearance of a normativity in a system that behaves stochastically with, statistical rules. It has this law-like behavior, right? Where the fog will settle to the bottom. But when you look at the individuals, that's not really what's happening. So, and this is like 7 years ago. So I wonder if he's
I don't think he's amended. No, this is he's doing something that I think actually really caters to the intuitions of people in biology. Like, we want to say, like, the dispositional account of function is totally unsatisfactory. If you really think about what function is on that account, a lot of the average person or the layman in biology they're going to find it unpalatable, because what's going on is we're not describing what should happen, like what an organism should survive or shouldn't survive. We're not really talking in terms of that. We're just talking about, here's what's happening. Here's the causal relations or the causal dispositions with respect to these mechanisms and structures in biology, right?
Yep.
But that's how I understand, and that's how I think a lot of people understand biology and mechanisms in terms of their dispositions, right? And that's how we want to understand function.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So Rosenberg, completely says, look, the teleological, because I think that he's actually, did you read, and I don't know if it was this paper, but did you ever read a paper by Nicholson that distinguished intrinsic and extrinsic purposefulness or purpose? I think he doesn't use the word purpose, purposive, intrinsic and extrinsic I can't even say it. I'm sorry. I can give you a citation if you haven't.
Was that on the nature of normativity?
No, I think it might even be the paper. Let me. I can check really fast.
The cell really. I have 3-4 papers by him right now.
Did you read this one by any chance?
Where's it at?
This organisms not machines is, I think, a very critical paper that you need to read if you're done. You did?
No, I haven't read this one. No.
This is a critical paper because a lot of the underlying assumptions are embedded here.
So this is 2013. Let me see if I even had that before. I thought I downloaded it all. Is this one of the papers that appeared in his normativity? He had that big normativity document where he had a number of different authors.
I don't think so.
Okay, so this is a different one then. So it's Nicholson 2013. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at it and see what I think overall.
It's actually a really interesting paper, despite the disagreement. You can learn a lot in this paper. I did not peruse it. I just kind of skimmed it. But I read enough to know the overarching view of his of a function that he takes. But it nonetheless is an interesting paper.
Yeah. I have been pondering function in enzymes and looking at that mathematical description of function. Let's see here. We have
there it is. Look at page 671, and I'll read the problem here. I think so. His notion of purposive, purposive, is that how you say it? I'm sorry. Is what? Let's see. I don't think any definition is the right definition.
I don't have a page 671. I've got pages 1 through.
No, look. If your concept, the concept that you should adopt is the one that doesn't entail contradiction, right? And I'm saying that if you take Nicholson's view, there's going to be contradiction on my view, at least, and on Speed's view. Okay, like if you take that there is normativity and the fabric of biology, that's a contradiction on my view. Okay, but I haven't offered those arguments, right? So there is a sense in which there's the right definition or the right concept, and it's the sense in which it doesn't conflict with your other concepts or other beliefs. Now, so look at page 671, the same one. Let me read the second paragraph of section 3. That's interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. At least to his view. Can I read it?
Could we first get on the same page?
671.
Okay. I don't have those kind of page numbers.
Look at the footnote 5 page. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was on the same page.
Okay.
Because that's where he really exposits his notion of purpose and function and telos.
Okay, so we're back down. So we're 1, 2. Okay, so this page. Okay, what page is it in reference to this page?
Sorry, what? Oh, the corresponding page number that I'm looking at?
Yeah.
671.
No, I don't have 671. I got page 3.
Yeah,
right.
I'm in the journal. I went through Phil papers.
Okay, so
let me read this. You see paradoxically on section 3. Oh,
yep.
Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to read that. This is interesting, at least if you want to understand Nicholson. Paradoxically, the single most important difference between organisms and machines has its basis in the prima facie appears to be their most obvious similarity. As indicated above, both organisms and machines operate towards the attainment of particular ends. Now that's like Kantian stuff, right? That's like, okay, but anyways, let's continue. That is both are purposive systems. However, their purposiveness is of a completely different kind. Organisms are intrinsically purposive, whereas machines are extrinsically purposive. Look at the footnote 3, right? He cites Aristotle, Locke, and Kant here, right? And he's like, anyways, a machine is extrinsically purposive in the sense that it operates towards an end that is external to itself. So it's telos. Like we're using these very heavy normative terms. And at first I thought that, okay, maybe he's just equivocating. Maybe what he means by telos, purposive function, is not what people mean when Kant says purpose. And then if you look at the footnote 5, he's including normativity in those notions. So he's using the same sense as like when Kant uses the notion of ends, right? And I just don't see how this fits any of this, right? Any of the purview of science and biology. Right. And if you can even continue to read. Do you want me to continue to read? But I mean,
sure.
Okay. So, blah blah blah. Telos. The last thing I remember is telos. Okay, telos is imposed from the outside and is of use or value to an agent other than itself. So, like for those that don't know, Kant and others, they distinguish intrinsic and extrinsic goods. So, money is going to be something like an extrinsic good because you can use it for something else. And that which you want that's to say, what you use money to accomplish, whatever that goal is going to be intrinsically good. So it might be someone's happiness, And the money that you've used to make that person happy is extrinsically good. So that's all. This is very Kantian stuff, right? As well as he cites Aristotle and Locke and another philosopher I'm slightly unfamiliar with. A machine is extrinsically purposive in the sense that it operates towards an end that is external to itself. Oh, am I rereading myself? Yeah. Okay. A machine does not serve its own interests, but those of its maker or user. Sure. Right. Yeah. No problem there. That's on the other hand, an organism is intrinsically purposive in the sense that it acts on its own behalf towards its own ends. This sounds very intentional, right?
Yeah, but it kind of does that because it's autopoietic. Basically, it's self-building.
But it's not in the normative sense, right? We can make sense of self-building, right, in a non-normative sense.
A crystal is self-building in a way, right?
Sorry, what?
A crystal is self-building,
right? But he's using it normatively. He's using normative. He says, "Look at the footnote 5. All this language is normative language." Right? But crystals don't build itself in a normative sense.
Right.
Well, I think normativity is something we're imposing on it.
Maybe it's an unfortunate. Or does he explicitly say that he's using that in a way, or maybe?
Yeah. Look, did you read the footnote 5?
I skimmed it, but not really.
Okay, telos is internal. Okay, that indicates that basically it's autopoietic. It's self-building. It's self-maintaining. It's self-controlling, and it's not imposed from the outside. Which
look, no one's going to disagree.
Problem.
No one. Look, I don't think it's a problem on the dispositional account of function. Right, the dispositional account of function can use these words. Right, but I'm saying that if you're not using a dispositional account, you're using some kind of normative account. He's rejecting the dispositional account. So these terms are being used normatively.
Okay, flesh out normatively for us very carefully.
Meaning relating to should, right? So when a crystal forms, right? If you're saying it's either on the dispositional account, we can explain that in terms of the causal dispositions of the structure of the molecules that just simply cause it to form in a certain way, right? There's no success or failure. It's not like it's doing something wrong or right, okay? It's not doing what it should be doing. Not in any of that, none, all of those I'm using rather synonymously, okay? But on the normative account, right, we're saying that's to say that there is a telos to it that the crystal is doing what it should be doing when it forms in a particular structure, right? But in a sense in which there's the possibility of failure and success, right? It's okay to say that crystal should form in a certain way on a dispositional account. We're just saying that given its causal tendencies, this is what is expected to happen. But that's not. Yeah, you just highlighted the crux of the problem right there.
Okay, but the merit of the organizational account is that it explains the normativity of functions, like the ideological account, whilst focusing on current contributions of function bearers, like the dispositional account. So it almost sounds like he's trying to marry these two things together.
Like the what two things? The normative and the what?
The dispositional.
No,
and
he rejects dispositional. Reread the footnote. Look at the first sentence of the fifth footnote. Right, he's accepting the organizational account. Right, so the organizational account understands normativity maybe in part whole relations or something like that.
Okay. Where's he? I missed the part where he's rejecting the organizational account.
He's saying those are impoverished views.
Where is he saying that?
Okay, so look at the fifth footnote. I can't really see, so I'm gonna have to open my paper. Okay.
Can you zoom in a bit? The letters are really small for the screen.
Yeah, I'm having trouble.
Just let me share the screen. I think I can navigate it if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, this thing
Mute.
You got the same problem I got.
Okay, but is this a little bit better?
No, same thing I got.
A little bit.
No, this is a little bit better. Okay. So let me. Okay, yeah, this is okay. So this is it. So look, he takes right here. I adopt the organizational account of function. Okay, and this motivation for similar. Look, he says. So the motivation for accepting the organizational comes from the familiar problems with the two classical accounts. So he rejects the two classical accounts, which is the ideological and the dispositional account. And he gives a problem with the ideological, and he gives a problem with the dispositional right here. It's too broad to capture the normative character according to the dispositional account.
Too broad to capture the normative character.
The merit of the organizational account is that it explains the normativity of functions. Now, and this really, look, he's citing Aristotle and Kant when he's citing telos and purposive.
Danny, okay, can I interject for a moment? Like
Of course.
Oh, sorry. In the footnote of 5, he's talking about the definition of function, right? Like
he's giving his account of function.
Yeah, but in the paragraph that you previously highlighted, he doesn't talk about function. I think he talks about purpose.
No, those are intertwined, right? I promise you.
Maybe he doesn't use them intertwined. Maybe.
No, he's got to, or there's a bigger problem, right? Because how do you make sense of intrinsic and extra? Well, I'm highlighting it around. Right? How do you make sense of purposive if it's either going to be dispositional or normative? Right. And 3, like, look, the 3. Let's just look at 3. Okay. Let's see. Or where does the fifth one come in? Sorry, not 3.
I maybe suspected that he uses the function and purposive in a distinct manner. But
yep.
Although I may be wrong.
Right here. Look, this is how he ties them too. The distinction between intrinsic and extrinsic forms of purposiveness also explain the crucial dissimilarity between organisms and machines, namely that the attribution of functions has a different basis and different significance of the two kinds of systems.
Distinction between the intrinsic.
Machines have functions, organisms do not.
So I don't agree. I don't disagree with that. Okay, they are autopoietic systems. They're self-building, self-functional. If there's telos, it is basically its own internal disposition to do that. Okay, that is also a disposition. I mean, a cell is disposed to maintain its boundaries, to maintain its equilibrium, to maintain whatever state it's in. And that's basically the autopoietic account of life. And I'm not sure if he's we may be tripping up on his use of language and just the way he's talking about this, but I'd have to read the entire paper to try to get a feel for where he's saying.
Right here. So look, this is why he thinks organisms don't have functions, right? Because he accepts an organizational account of function, which is to say that we can understand a function in terms of like an overall part-whole relation. So there's like, so the whole of a machine.
What does it do? What does it do, and how does it do it? Basically.
Yeah, but he accepts that parts of both machines and organisms have functions right here, but he doesn't think the whole organism has a function.
Yeah, I don't think it does either.
So basically, he's saying like if there's a purpose, it's functional, but does it have a purpose? It's not functional. That's what he's
right.
saying.
This is
an extrinsic function.
Right, but the point is that this is like, I'm not getting an account. Now that might be plausible what Nestlig said, that he distinguishes purposive and function. Okay, that might be a plausible account.
I think he's of course treated them as related concepts, of course, but I suspect he's using them in distinctive manners.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think that's gonna invite a slew of problems. And what the heck does he mean when he talks about ends? And he's relating particular ends with purposive systems. But functionality here, he's doing. I think he's doing the same thing right over here with function. So this is why I thought that they were related, at least, or synonymous, if not. But like, the point is that this is largely confused. Right, especially with his uses of normativity as being something that shows up in a biological story.
I might be able to get him over here to talk to us.
That would be great. Actually, you know what's funny is that you might be more likely to get him if you give like a soft criticism of his view and ask him to explain it. He might be more likely to come on.
Okay, you do it, babe, perhaps.
I'll quote you, Danny. I'll say we got this guy.
Well, okay.
You are the bait, Danny.
Didn't he reject? Did he reject your invitation at one point?
No, I haven't reached out to him.
Oh, you haven't. Okay.
No.
Okay, so do you want to reach out to him, or do you want me to reach out to him? I
No,
don't.
the only one we had trouble with was David Deemer, because
Okay.
he didn't want to get involved in the creationist fiasco because he hates creationists. And whereas Bruce came in because Bruce wanted to fight. So Bruce Damer. But anyway, we're still working on David Deemer.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, the point is that if I can invite him on your behalf for your stream, I could do that.
Yeah.
If you want.
Yeah, if you want to reach out to him, give him a mild criticism, and tell him, and maybe point to our papers.
Okay.
Do a joint email, and I'll link our reading of his papers, because as far as his the cell is not a machine stuff, he found there was no disagreement between Scott and Immutable and I and him on this part of it, right? But you're pointing out a place where we may have a disagreement. Now, the thing about function is I always think of function in terms of a mathematical description of function, right? I don't get.
He's not using it that way, though.
Well,
no, I also said in the chat that there are perhaps different usages of the term functions that are conveying different concepts. Like I can say, for example, in a pack of snow, the air within the snow functions to insulate warmth.
But that's a dispositional account. He rejects the dispositional account, right?
But still, I'm just saying the word function can have different usages.
Yeah. Okay. So number one is that there's going to be a problem either way, right? I think the first problem is that maybe he distinguishes purposiveness, and telos from function. That would be quite strange to me, though. But I don't think you're completely wrong about that, because he seems to say that they're related, which is to say they're not synonymous. Okay, so that, but and if it's the case that they're synonymous, then we have the original objection I presented.
Well,
so either way,
it's like I think it's like the relation between the term mammal versus the term milk, basically, right? The two are related, but they are not the same concept.
Well, sure, but the thing is that what supposedly unite the common property between function, let's say function and the good. I don't think these are synonymous, right? Even on a Christian view, let's say, so a function of, let's say, the heart on a Christian view is that God created it to make it to where it pumps your blood, right? That's the function, but it's nothing. Notice I haven't mentioned morality. Okay, I haven't talked about any notion of action, right or wrong action, but rightness and wrongness and functionality have the common essence that there's an oughtness, right? There's the way it should be. If a right action, if there's an action that's right, it should happen. If the function of a heart is to pump, then it should pump, right? So they're not synonymous, but the point is that what unites them conceptually is that they're normative, right? And I'm wondering if so then he might say, I doubt it. The fact that he cited Kant and Aristotle makes me think that the notion of purposiveness and telos are in fact normative. And then he's saying function is as well normative. So it's my original objection, I think, still goes through. But I'm not too sure.
So if your complaint is that he may be doing conflating, in one part of the paper he uses the term function in one way, and in another part of the paper he's using the term in another way, and that is very confusing.
Well, it's confusing, but here's my main thing. Here's my main issue, right? He's including normativity in the fabric of biology. Okay. I take the dispositional account. I don't know much about the other account, right? I take a dispositional account of function, okay, and that is to reject the normativity as being part of the fabric of biology. We could, like what you said, right? The function of a heart is to pump blood. So what that might mean is that when hearts pump blood, I live. That's all that means. There's nothing about should or good or bad, right and wrong, telos, none of that, right? So that's what I mean. So that's how I think biologists at least should use the term, okay? But if they're using it differently, then I think they get into big problems, right? And I'm just saying that he seems to be stepping in mud here when he presents that a normative notion of function, but then maybe he just has a different concept of normativity. But then I think that there's a kind of unified understanding of normativity. I don't think he's using.
He doesn't use the word normative in this paper.
Yeah, he uses it as footnote.
It's in the footnote, and that's the only place it.
Yeah, but this is irresponsible.
In that one place, and that was it.
That matters a lot.
Oh, he also uses in the table 1, also at the bottom of table 1.
Yeah, but where's he going?
No, but he's worth talking to. He's worth talking to because it could be that he's like, no. Here's what I meant. Okay.
Okay. Can you go to table 1, Danny?
What table?
Table 1. I think it's maybe above or below. I don't know where. There it is. See normativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, machines, maker, and okay, system itself. So normativity. So he's redefining. Now his work was to redefine the idea of normativity in biology as being for the system itself. So if you want to attach the word good, and I wouldn't use the word good.
Yeah, me neither.
Basically, it would be whatever the system does in order to maintain itself, and that's the auto.
Yeah, but that's a dispositional account, maintain. You could understand maintain in terms of like living or passing down genes or whatever.
What about the function of the system is to maintain the system itself? Is it a normative?
Well, maintain. You see, maintain is like if I think that yeah. So if you understand maintain in the way I just understood, that's a dispositional account.
Well, a tornado does that. A tornado maintains itself.
Right, but that's a dispositional account.
Okay. But it's sort of it's an autopoietic system, and it's self-maintaining,
Look, I think Nicholson is not crazy, right? Okay, like let's say I'm right. I could be wrong in my interpretation, although I don't think I'm too far off. Let's say I'm right in my interpretation, right? What Nicholson is doing is catering to our intuitions about how we talk about these things, right? I think he actually cited this, right? That we have a way of talking about biological systems that's very unlike other mechanisms in science, right? And he wants to preserve that sort of dynamic. I think he has a motivation here, and that would explain his use of the language here. But I think I want to talk to him.
Okay, in this paper, I have intended to show that the MCO's machine concept of organism, is that it, stands today as one of the most serious obstacles impeding further progress in our theoretical comprehension of living systems. So again, he's pushing back against our intuition of a machine, right?
So the points of function and purpose is not is only a point against the machine concept. Like like as you mentioned before. He also talked about like how systems behave at the microscopic scale as opposed to.
Well, how I see, look, this is how I see Nicholson's argument, and I could be wrong because I've only skimmed it. So everyone take what I say with a grain of salt. But this is how I understand Nicholson. Okay, just looking through a couple papers, right? So take this with a grain of salt. He accepts all these, the notion of telos or purposiveness. Now he also rejects the equivalence relation or the analogy between machine and organism. Okay, so what he does here is that he distinguishes between types of functions and types of purposiveness and ends, right? And says, hey, look, there's this particular kind of function or this particular kind of purposiveness, okay, that we only see in biological systems and not in machine and human-made machines, right? And in virtue of this property, they're not analogous. That's what I take him to be saying overall.
The function of an organism is different to the function of a machine.
Exactly. Yes. Right. But nonetheless, he's relying on a teleological view, right? And distinguishing like the way Kant would distinguish between different sorts of teleologies and normative concepts, like Kant talked about intrinsic and extrinsic good. He didn't hypothetical and categorical norms, right? They're different kinds of teleologies and oughts, right? And I think that's what he's doing here. Now, if granting the starting assumption, it makes sense, right? He's saying something like what a person might say, hey, look, money and people are not the same kind of thing because we use money for things And that's to say we use them as a means to an end, but people are ends in themselves. He's essentially doing this whole Kantian thing on the distinction between mechanisms and organisms. He's basically pulling a Kant in terms of why they're disanalogous. So creationists are not licensed, he says, to make this analogy, given the distinction between intrinsic and extrinsic purposiveness.
Okay, I think he would be horrified by your criticism, but I got to step away for just a minute, guys. So go ahead and discuss this. I'll be back in about 3 minutes, okay?
All right.
I mean, look,
right.
read. I would encourage you, Nessa, read the whole entire of 671, and I want to know if you agree with me. I guess
I haven't read the whole paper itself, but I think I get your points, and I think they are fair points so far as I can tell.
But it would be, you see, the reason why I was being, hey, why y'all you should be, Rosenberg would like vomit at some of what he's saying here, absolutely vomit. Okay, why? Because Rosenberg thinks on naturalism, there's no such thing as meaning, there's no such thing as telos, there's no such thing as purpose. None of these terms should be dropped, right? And he's a naturalist. Okay, he's one of the most famous naturalists. Not only is he a naturalist, he's one of the, I think, as far as I know, he's the most famous philosopher that accepts scientism, which is a view that what's his name? Speed accepts. Okay, so he should be reading Rosenberg.
Alex Rosenberg doesn't accept intrinsic purpose in nature.
He doesn't accept purpose at all.
No, or not from the perspective of if I pick up this rock and now I'm using it to scratch my back, now it has a purpose for my point of perspective.
Yeah, but I don't. Okay, I'm going to speculate. This is when my speculation begins, right? I've heard Rosenberg in a debate, and the way that he was talking about purpose, goodness, rightness, meaning, even meaning, right? He was saying these things don't belong in naturalism at all. So I would wager that he would advocate to drop even the metaphorical terms, and so there's like going to be a loose disagreement between Nicholson and Rosenberg in the sense that, hey, this function, right? Nicholson wants to say there's a false analogy between them, so we should drop our notions of these kind of analogous metaphors between organism and machine. And Rosenberg might agree with like, hey, yeah, we should drop them just because that they don't belong at all, right? It's not even a question of analogy. It's just a question of like these things don't belong in the framework at all.
Hmm.
But I think Speed would really, if he wants to get like the strongest version of his views, probably Rosenberg.
I don't know how Rosenberg can believe there is I understood that he doesn't believe in an intrinsic purpose to the universe and to life maybe, but maybe
he rejects meaning.
But he would, like, if he drives a car, he would think that the car has some purpose. Right, for him at least, right? I don't know what he would mean by it doesn't have a purpose anymore. Yeah, right.
I'm going to play that clip that I heard a long time ago. What Rosenberg said was, when I was a Christian, I was like, oh my gosh, this is craziness. But I think Rosenberg is right. I think that if you're going to accept metaphysical naturalism, Rosenberg's conclusion as a naturalist is the right one. But Rosenberg, let me see. He says stuff like there's no meaning. No, this. Let me see.
I would say there was no intrinsic meaning. Like, but maybe I'm wrong. Like, I'm not very philosophy savvy. Yeah. I'm a novice in philosophy, so I have my own opinions, but of course I'm not very confident in them, as I would be regarding like my specialty, which is more biology.
But I'm inclined to agree with you. I mean, I think what I do accept I don't accept that anything is intrinsically valuable, except I don't understand the distinction between X is valuable and X is intrinsically valuable. I think I understand the first one.
Like the money, like the 10 euros I have in my pocket. It's not intrinsically valuable. It's just a piece of paper. I can burn it, but I can also spend it for something. So it has some meaning in some context that we just construct.
Well, yeah, that gets into tricky stuff. I think we could have a good conversation about that.
Oh, am I talking gibberish about this philosophical?
Well, it's not gibberish.
Example?
I don't agree with anything. Well, I agree with. I disagree with what you just said, but I don't think that you're gibberish because I think that if I explained my view, I think you would come to be like, oh yeah, I think that's what I meant or something like that.
Okay, so let's see. Did I post this? I'm not sure. Sean Carroll did a thing with Alex Rosenberg on
Yeah, you put it in the side chat.
What's that?
You did post a link in the side chat.
Oh, I did already. Okay. Okay. Anyway, yeah, that was a long time ago. That was like 3 minutes ago. I forgot. Okay, boys and girls. What we're going to do now. Yeah, I'll have to read this paper. I wonder if I got this no, I guess I didn't have this on my radar at all. I will print this, mother, and take a look at it. Oh, yeah. Do you have his email address, Danny? Or is he?
Nicholson's?
Yeah.
Oh, I can get it, but
It's on
it's
his
not
paper.
hard to find, right? Yeah, it should
And
be
you've
somewhere.
already emailed him before.
I did? Did he
Yeah.
respond to me?
Yeah, and he responded and said he's surprised and pleased that people are reading his paper.
Oh, okay. That was the one. Okay. Let me take a look at that.
He wouldn't join for a talk. Or did he not say that?
I'm not sure if he said that he would not join, or let me take a look here. YouTube.
The only person that's pretty much indicated a resistance to it is Dr. Deemer.
Wait, can I share this video of Rosenberg? He's very famous for this. Let me share my screen. This is Rosenberg against Craig. This is why I think Rosenberg is right here if you accept metaphysical naturalism. But
okay, did you put the link to this video in the chat?
In the private chat, yeah. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Okay, so here it is. Can everyone? I'm going to put the subtitles. 1 second. Okay. Okay.
And Dennett and others, where I agreed with you was that if only physical things exist, if physics fixes all the facts, as you put it, then it seems to me you're right. There isn't any intentional states. There aren't any meaning to sentences. There is no truth. Yeah.
Could I get you to write a blurb for the back of my book?
So somebody on Facebook said, why have a debate between Craig and Rosenberg? They both agree on the consequences of denying God. And so he thought it would be pointless. But I mean, it drives you back to the question, well, is there a God? Is metaphysical naturalism true?
Maybe there's a chance for my book to be in the Christian bookstores after all.
Yeah, he thinks that. So he thinks that there's no meaning to sentences. There's no truth. There's no, and none of that. On metaphysical naturalism, there's no normativity, right? And I completely agree with Rosenberg here, which is why I'm not a naturalist.
Really? That does it for you?
Well, I mean, a bunch of other arguments, but like the point is that Alex Rosenberg is a naturalist. He accepts scientism. He's right in league with your views. You should read him.
Yep. Scientism, by the way, is not a metaphysical position. It's a methodological. It's a methodology.
It's epistemic. Yeah, it's an epistemic position. It's but the point is
that not even epistemic. It's methodological.
Well, then you're just using a proprietary definition. Then
I am. Yes, I am. I agree with that.
Oh, well, then I don't know what you mean.
So it's yeah, because nobody's ever really heard me out on it. So,
well, I'll hear you out. I'll mute myself. I won't unmute until you tell me, Danny, unmute. Because I do want to hear it. Oh, why not? Are you tired?
Getting there, yeah. Well, no, I'm trying to put links. I'm trying to find that damn first video with Sean Carroll, and give me a minute to find the damn thing. What the hell tab did I put it on? I had one by Sean Carroll. Must be up here. Nope, it is not. Son of a bitch. Okay, where's my link?
Half of all our videos is speed griping about his tabs.
Yeah, I know. I actually crashed my Mac with Google Chrome, and I mean this Mac has like 2 terabytes of internal or solid state memory, and I don't know how the hell Google Chrome crashed that, but it did. Anyway,
Scott, did you understand my criticism of like the idea is that what distinguishes him, what Nicholson uses to distinguish like organisms and machines such that they're not analogous, is his notion of purposiveness and function and telos, and that he includes a concept of normativity in, and that's my criticism, right? That if he's wrong in that starting assumption, then this whole thing falls down in terms of why, or what explains why machines and cells are not analogous. That's the criticism.
I'd have to reread it in light of what how you define normative, or how normative is defined, because
look, you don't have to do very much. You don't have to do very much. This is what I would do.
Hold on, I got to get the door. Hold on.
okay.
Start talking.
Yeah, all you have to do is, but before you read page 671, the paper, or page 3, depending on which copy you have of the paper, read what other people have to say about what normative means. Get your own concept of normativity based on the literature. Don't let it come from me per se. And then read just that one page and see if the 5th footnote is compatible with what you've learned and what your concept of science and biology. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, well, let's look at this. What Craig and him were talking about was basically meaning. Basically, he was saying, okay, there is no
intentional
meaning.
states as well.
Intentional states.
Rosenberg is an eliminativist.
Okay,
right?
but you can't eliminate them. You can't eliminate them from the frame of being a human being operationally inside of yourself, right? From your first person point of view, you cannot eliminate normativity and intention from your first person point of view, but you can eliminate them when you are stepping outside, taking a God's eye view and looking at it scientifically, right? And that's the difference. There are there's 2 different frames, and in one frame, meaning, like I have meaning in my life. I'm not going to deny that my kids mean a lot to me, that my life means a lot to me, that what I do means a lot to me. But on the outside, if I were to take a look at that scientifically, if I were to look at myself as an organism and try to figure out how the hell I got here, then I would say that no, there is no meaning at that level. Why is that so difficult for people?
It's just contradictory. That's why. Because you're saying
no,
that.
It's not contradictory.
Look, I let you finish. Let me explain, and I'll be very quick. The idea is that you're saying there's meaning from the first person perspective, but when you step outside of that first person perspective and analyze what you stepped outside from in the third person perspective, then suddenly you're an eliminativist. And the point is that thing, whatever exists that possesses meaning, only possesses meaning in one sense, in this before you've stepped outside, then doesn't have meaning in this other second sense. And that's to say that thing that exists has meaning and doesn't have meaning at the same time in the same sense, which means the only way you can get out of this is by equivocating on meaning here.
No, by having 2 different frames. And that's the difficulty, is showing you why this is not contradictory.
Have you ever explained what framework means?
Hold on a second. It has the same application for free will, consciousness, first person perspective. All of these so-called problems of philosophy are rendered just moot by looking at it from 2 different frames.
What do you mean by a frame?
And understanding what we're doing. If you are trying to understand the world, biology, what you are, all of that, science, right? You necessarily have to step outside of the frame of being what you are and who you are, and you have to be as if you were aliens visiting from another dimension where there's no time, space, shape, extension, anything. You don't know what the hell these aliens are, but they're coming down here and they're looking at our entire world from a purely physical perspective, right? And they're going to come up with a whole lot of information about how this thing is operating. But then what we are a part of that world. We're not separate from that world. And when you look at us as a part of that world, we have our own point of view, our own personal point of view, our own, our mind develops this This it's sort of a fiction, and that's what the Buddhists will tell you is that
I think it's called the Phaneron in philosophy, right, Danny?
the what?
Sorry, what?
The Phaneron, like the mind view of the world. Or the
Phenomena?
construction. The Phaneron.
Phaneron.
I've never like, are you talking about like constitution in the phenomenal and the noumenal world? Is that what you're?
No, he's talking about.
I will look up the wiki.
Or is this in reference to phenomenology?
In private chat here.
Yeah.
Oh, look in chat. I'm gonna look in chat.
And I just don't see a problem with being able to take things from one frame or another frame by being able to step out.
Yeah, this is more of a concept.
And you think it's contradictory because you see it, because you insist somehow that these two frames have to have the same language, the same.
You haven't explicated what you mean by frame.
Okay. I told you about the aliens, right? So they would have one frame. They're looking at the world as a physical.
Look, you're not giving me the definition. I need a definition.
A definition.
Your examples don't help.
Okay, how would I define frame? Point of view. Basically.
So I'm right there with you, right? There are two different frames in that sense, right?
There is no point of view when you're looking at science. There's no.
That's called the third person point of view.
Actually,
that's not very controversial.
Okay. So third person point of view from an alien's perspective of what's going on with you would not find any meaning, would not find any consciousness, any first person point of view, anything. Yet you as a part of this universe do find that. Because of course
I'm in agreement with you, but that's precisely why I reject naturalism. So what you just said is exactly why I reject naturalism. Because here's the idea that if naturalism or a natural thing is understood in terms of the sort of thing that can only be approached from the third person point of view, and that I know that there are things that are meaningful and only via a first person point of view, then the thing that is literally defined as a thing that can only approach things from the third person point of view is not going to be able to address what I know in the first person point of view, which is why I accept the dichotomy between natural and non-natural.
But you can address it from the third person point of view at a very detailed level when you look at the fact that what you're talking about is your brain and how your brain functions. When you look at it from the neuroscientific point of view, okay, you can understand how all these things are meaningful, but you're not going to feel that meaning unless you are the thing that you are analyzing, right? So you can't.
It's like you're making my argument for me. I mean, this is exactly what I would say to someone that's a naturalist.
It's like, you're a young man, and I think your views are very rigid in.
We're agreeing here.
No,
there's a problem. You just highlighted the problem that basically pushed me out of naturalism.
Yeah, but why don't you understand that you are the thing that you are studying at once with studying it, right? You can occupy one frame or the other. There's no contradiction between those two frames. I can see desire. I mean, I could brain scan desire in you at the same time that you are having that desire. But for you, that desire is going to be this expansive qualitative qualia, right? I mean, you're feeling it. There is no contradiction between these 2 points of view.
Wait, how do you know someone has a belief?
How would you know somebody had a belief from a neuroscientific point of view?
Yes.
That would take one hell of a computer.
Okay, so wait, look, it's the case that it's the case that everyone here somehow knows or believes that other people have beliefs and desires and phenomenological states like qualitative states and whatnot. Okay.
Yep.
That goes into the problem of the mind. That we can tell that you are like a very advanced computer. That's
right. Which is exactly the problem of why neurologists are not able to know anybody's intentional states without that person or at some point a person reporting that they have a particular mental state, and then what the neurologist can do is see what correlates with that intentional state. That's as far as they can go.
And with real quick, guys, 20 years, we've had somebody come in the room, Simon's Funk, and he hasn't really said much, so I wanted to give him an opportunity to make any comments or raise any questions or greetings or anything like that.
We're all about opportunity here.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom. 1 second.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. That's cool. We've kind of moved on a lot from the original reason I came in, which was about the paper, to say that I don't disagree with Danny's criticism, although I would lay odds that there is a particular, that he has a particular meaning for the words that are being used, specifically normativity, which may differ, or not differ from usage, but differ from the conclusion from usage. So that would be my thing. I would say when he says it itself is the standard by which we judge it, I think that's kind of circular in philosophical terms. And so maybe there's some definitional problem in what he's saying. And I think that's basically what he's trying to point out. As far as I knew it at the time, now you've moved on to intentional states, etc.
Yeah.
Which is
Nicholson trying to do, at least in the paper we read, all I see Nicholson trying to do is say, hey, we've been using the paradigm of mechanism or whatever since the 30s or 40s, and it may have and it's been fruitful, but it may have caused us not to be able to bear fruit from a different point of view, which is looking at things stochastically, probabilistically, and from the point of view of the very small. And so to me, it's about paradigm shifting more than normativity or meaning or teleology.
So you're not you said you had to read it, but I would suggest that you read page 671 after you've investigated what philosophers mean by normativity.
That's fine. I would love to do that. Yeah.
And it's not that much work. That's not that much work. So I want to know your view at some point this week.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Why don't you give us a nutshell of what philosophers mean by normativity again?
Well, I think I did in the chat, actually.
What's that?
Well,
I think I did in the chat. Somebody asked, Stephanie asked what it meant. So I gave a general definition of it in philosophy.
Oh, you already did? Simus already did?
Yeah, do you have any idea where it is?
Just going up to try and find it now.
Well, this is what I mean by normativity. I mean, or what I think philosophers are talking about when they're talking about normativity. You're talking about a specific kind of what I call a consistency relation. It's a consistency relation in terms of oughtness, right? Or what ought not to be, what's right and wrong, what's true, or even true and falsity, although that's more controversial. Okay. So for instance, the idea of let's take a law, like you ought not kill someone for $20 on the street. That seems to be forbidden, right? The point is that there's a consistency relation for in terms of that truth, right? That someone can obey the law, so there's like the law is fulfilled, right? There's a consistency relation between the person choosing not to steal and then the law saying you ought not steal, and then someone stealing and then being out of accord or inconsistent with the norm, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so the same with but this is not just with laws. This is like with anything that's right and wrong, good or bad, right? Desirable and undesirable, is that there's like these consistency relations between, how the world is and how the world should be,
Okay, so normative generally means relating to an evaluative standard.
Yeah, and then we're gonna have standard, right? That the idea of a standard is that there's things that are consistent or inconsistent with a standard. That
indeed. I mean, a shame you stepped away because I was actually agreeing with some of what you said earlier, but you stepped away and missed it. But nonetheless,
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So then there is somebody in the chat who asks, let's see, what was the question again? I don't get why subjective views disprove naturalism.
Why, like the first person point of view disproves naturalism?
Like I think it's like from my subjective point of view, my iPhone has a purpose, a normative purpose, from my subjective perspective.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that I guess think about science as a methodology for a certain kind of knowledge, right? The knowledge of the natural world. Okay, that methodology is only going to go so far. right? And then so what philosophers of science and others, what they're gonna outline. Look, after at this point, the natural sciences can't really apply their methodology, and it's because it's the sort of thing that can't be approached by that now by the sciences, and so now there's a big talk about, okay, what is that line? Okay, and problems of demarcation and stuff, right? Now, the dualists, right? A lot of theists, especially, right? They will say something like, "Look, there's things that you only know, that are like, for instance, I believe that that it's raining outside. Okay, the way I've come to know that belief is in virtue of that belief being mine, right? I have a kind of personal access to it. Okay, and what would sort of requirement, right, for that belief to be mine is basically the way I've come to know it, that I have to that it's my belief, right? That's in virtue of how I know it. Now, if someone else were to come to know about my belief, right, they couldn't know it in the same way. They couldn't know it in the same way. Why? Because if they knew it in the same way, it would actually be their belief, or they would be mine, or they would be me, right? So it's almost like an asymptote in the sense that, like, science can, okay, maybe there are things in science that we could learn that might grant us knowledge of intentional states and beliefs and stuff like that, but it's not going to get close to that point, right? To where, like, the point at which you're me. And so that's kind of like, I think the whole dialectic is that, given my first person point of view, the sort of transparency and authority that I have over my beliefs, for me to know my beliefs is just in virtue of the belief being mine, and no one else can know it that way unless it was their belief, and so science can't approach it.
Okay, that's why I prescribe scientism, because I don't see a problem, I don't see a contradiction, I don't see any issue with understanding that I am not you. I am not the same piece of matter. I am not Danny mattering in a mind-like way. You are Danny mattering in a mind-like way, right? There's no problem with that. I know that if I were to cut you out of the universe, or erase you in some manner, or squash you with a Mack truck, that you would no longer be Danny mattering in a mind-like way.
Look, that's compatible with a dualist framework. No, look, that's compatible with a dualist position. What? Right?
How is that compatible with a dualist position?
Look, the fact that if you put an axe through my head and I no longer have beliefs, doesn't establish identity.
Don't tempt me. Well,
right. So that's good. So the fact that there's a causal relation.
Is that really the problem, though, Danny? Is it not that we just don't have enough information to understand what your beliefs are unless you tell us?
Yeah. So the problem is that what is it that I can offer as an argument to show why, in principle, it can't ever be approached?
I don't know. I've never heard of it.
And so, well, one of the ways that you can argue for this is distinguishing the first person point of view and the third person point of view. That's to say that well, the idea is that if you understand the natural sciences as approaching things from the third person point of view, right? And if there's a distinction between the first person point of view and the third person point of view, right? And I presented that distinction in terms of the epistemology of one's own beliefs, that's to say self-knowledge, right? If there is such a distinction, that means that the sciences can never approach the first person point of view.
Okay, guys, let's put a pin in this real quick. Let's put a pin in this real quick, because
if that is correct, Danny, then you will be right, but you have yet to show that it is correct.
Okay, yield to Scott here, moderator. Yield to Scott.
Is this right now SNATA, or are we going to attempt to have SNATA at 9 o'clock?
Oh shit! I don't know if I'm up for it.
Because we've been going on, and I don't mind. This is actually quite an energetic discussion. It's just that we have to think about shooting this one in the head if we're going to have SNATA later.
Yeah,
I'm fine with shooting in the head, anyways. I want to run away from Simus's objections.
That's why y'all need to come back.
I don't mind shooting it in the head because I've got no idea where to go from here.
Well,
Let's see.
wherever you go from here, come back at 9 o'clock for Snata.
Yeah. Let's. Okay, we'll do it at 9 tonight.
Well, but we can just do something chill for Snata. Like I can come in here if I do come in here. That is, I don't know if I will. We could just keep it chill. We don't have to talk about dualism and mind stuff all like 24/7. There's other things that, by the way, guys. Like I know we talk about what I disagree, but like we could talk about things about what we agree about. You know, I mean, like because look, we're all atheists here, right? I mean, there's got to be something we could talk about that's not like so mentally taxing.
Yeah, I think I'm able to. I'm slowly coming to understand more and more what your
Pineapple
objections
pizza?
are and what your views are. What's that?
Pineapple on pizza, can we agree on that? It's not a really good idea.
Pineapple on pizza, that would probably be more draining
Pizza?
than meaning
Bacon?
theology and normativity.
Do we get bacon on the pizza? Triple bacon?
Oh, Danny, is it normatively good or normatively bad to have pineapple on pizza?
Well, I think
yeah.
I have a reason not to put pineapple in pizza. So that's to say I ought not do it, which means it's bad.
There is a standard.
We can
do pineapple. Okay.
Do y'all want to? Maybe if you want. Well, no, the Snata is like it's that could just be chill. Like that's what I'm saying. Speed.
Yeah, we'll probably talk about Maddox on Snata.
Well, then I don't like talking about.
Just one last question, then, Danny. So you positively deny the existence of God or gods, is that correct?
Yeah, I do.
Excellent. Okay, I just need yes or no, and I'm not going to push you any further.
Yeah, no, I'm a hard atheist. As you know, I don't really have a vendetta against the lacktheist. I don't really. I mean, I could have I could say stuff about it, but it's just not worth it. So I just cater to them. I'm a hard atheist. Whatever, whatever.
Well, we each find our own position, right? Because that's the first person perspective on it.
So I have a question about channel ethics. So Maddox yesterday put out a thing on Professor Dave, where he got some old clips of him in interviews explaining why he never got a master's degree and talking about his life and all that stuff. So if you have stuff publicly online like that, is there any problem with somebody going back and showing it?
No, it's out there.
Well, other than asking them if they still believe that.
I think I'm going to bed soon because it's now 1 a.m. over here, but I have a question to Danny before I leave. Okay. According to you, naturalism does not give any chance to having any purpose whatsoever. No, not even a subjective purpose. But how does a supernatural solve this problem?
So sorry. Does the supernatural? Well, then you mean okay. So you're saying that, on my view, naturalism. There's no sense. There's no normativity on naturalism, on my view, right? And you're saying that. Well, what is non-naturalism or supernaturalism? How does that fix the problem? Is that your question?
Yes.
Well, I just take that if naturalism is false, then that means there's a possibility of there being normativity. And so that's to say that it's the case that I think that pineapple on pizza is bad in a normative sense, I'm not inconsistent there by accepting naturalism.
So I mean, the fact that naturalism does not give any chance to normativity, that does not automatically mean that including any non-natural would also give normativity a chance. Maybe normativity is impossible under any circumstance.
There's the issue of truths, right? There's the issue of truths too. So naturalism, there's other things that it rejects. It objects to Platonism. So there's no propositions. There's no truth value is something that's not discoverable by the sciences in the same way that atoms are, right? That's that kind of thing. But I think that what you're suggesting is that what if there's in a world where there's only let's say one electron, right? Well, I would say that there's one electron plus abstracta, and if there are no minds, there could still possibly be normativity in the world. There could be normativity with value properties with respect to the electron, but they're just not causally efficacious in that world. But the point is that I think what the metaphysical naturalism wants to say is that it's some kind of necessary truth across all possibilities, right? Then in every world, but if not, then it's a contingent truth, and then it would just be the case that it's contingently false in the actual world. So naturalism is contingently false.
But I don't think I'm perhaps not phrasing my question.
I'm sorry. Interrupt me though. Just interrupt me.
To rephrase or to rechange my question to maybe something else. How could normativity be possible in any circumstance, non-natural, natural?
That I find so. Just the fact that I find things desirable indicates that there's normativity in the world.
From the fact that you have desires.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Because I take the view that if I have a desire to do X, I take X to be valuable. And
that doesn't change. Like, suppose you are like your mind is just a product of the natural brain. That doesn't change the fact that your desires are not natural.
Okay. Well, this gets into a deeper. Like, I would have to give you a little bit more arguments to substantiate my claim here. But are you suggesting? And plus, your audio is kind of weird to me. Is that just me?
I think I have my air thing on. Maybe it's the wrong.
But is the question that, like, what's the contradiction in me having a desire and naturalism being true?
Like you saying that you have normativity exists because you have, as a mind, you have desires.
Right, I have desires, yeah, and beliefs. By the way, I think beliefs are normative as well.
But for the sake of argument, suppose that your mind is the product of a natural brain. For the sake of argument, would that change the normative being non-natural?
Yeah, so on my view, I'm just telling you my view. It's like saying, suppose a triangle has 5 sides. Or something.
Right. I get it. Yeah. Thanks for answering.
You know the principle of explosion.
Yes, contradictory.
So anything would follow.
Yeah. It's not like A is not A, and right. So I'm basically asking you, what if A is A and not A at the same time? Basically, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's how it feels. Yeah, I don't accept my view on the basis of like empirical data. I accept my view basis on like analyticity, logic, argumentation.
So from your view, is like the fact that you have desires precludes the possibility that your mind can be a product from a natural brain.
Well, a product. Now, to say that the natural and the non-natural don't interact, I would not take that position.
I mean, exclusively from the natural brain. Like
right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So exactly, that's the only way that I could actually. I mean, think about it, right? Like the only way I would able to have a view is to have. Well, the fact that I'm saying that there's an I, I'm implying their views, and I take views to be normative. So the fact that I exist, I know naturalism is false.
That's clear. Now I understand. Well, thank you, guys. I'm going to bed now, so really interesting conversation. Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Bye-bye.
Does anybody care to respond to my ethical question about YouTube sites? And
sorry, what was that, Speed? I talked over you a little bit to say goodbye to Nestle because I haven't seen him.
I was just wondering how ethical it is to, like, for Maddox, for instance, to have gone back into all of Professor Dave's previous interviews and extracted, this dialogue to show why Professor Dave doesn't have a master. I think his point was he's not a real professor. I don't think Professor Dave ever said he was a real.
And then his educational listing or whatever on his YouTube site, he lists his educational credentials. So,
but I mean, if people have content out on the internet and they use their own name, it's not doxing, right? Because you're just gathering it and that's what he did to Professor Dave, right?
Yeah.
Well, he does use his first name. And normally you refer to a professor's last name, not his first name. That would imply to me that he's not an actual professor or claiming to necessarily to be an actual professor. He may be. He could be Professor Dawkins or Professor Hawkins, or professors refer to themselves by their last name.
Yeah. So I mean, it's obviously his YouTube channel, and he chose Professor Dave because it was a catchy title, and I don't think he ever claimed to be anything else. But what I was wondering about, what I asked John about, and he deleted my comment. I said, John, how would you like if somebody went and did your backstory by scrubbing old internet accounts of you? And I'm just wondering, I might be interested in doing that. Because I found some things. Oh, Brenda, you're echoing Brenda.
Brenda, our video got some views, over the next.
This one?
The one that we did yesterday, Brenda.
Yeah, I'll put my headphones on so you don't get feedback.
Yeah, where did? Okay, that was the first thing you linked up there. Let me put that in my description.
Wait, the video? No, that was to something else. That was to the Rosenberg thing, right?
So have you linked your video? Link it, and I'll put
with
it in
Brenda.
my description.
Yeah, this is the video with Brenda. We talked about what is philosophy, and in the context of her discussion at Talk Heathen.
And Brenda, when were you on Talk Heathen? Last week? She's
messing with her headphones, I think.
Okay.
Didn't Detroit do a video recently about the usage of philosophy or the usefulness of philosophy?
He did? Oh, I want to watch that. That's a really meta philosophy is actually very difficult. I can't philosophy is just it's hard to I've come up with 3 ways to explain what it is, and none of them are purely satisfactory. Which is why I give all 3 if people have the time.
Yeah, Danny and I had a good talk the other night. I thought it was helpful.
When were you on Talk Heathen?
Last week.
Last week, okay, Sunday. Okay.
Yeah, it's every Sunday, right? So
yep,
yeah, that was when.
Yeah,
and it was a little bit contentious because.
Really?
Yeah, because.
With Eric,
I think that what Danny and I decided is we were talking past each other. I had different concepts of what I had in mind from what they did.
I will have to check that out. Why don't I?
And then I was on last night with Standing for Truth on LLP towards the very end of that show.
Oh, you were?
Way towards the end, and I kind of yelled a lot.
Okay, good.
Because jungle jargon.
Enough said.
There are people. Yeah, there are people.
Is enough to say right there.
If I ever did open mics, there are going to be certain people that are just not allowed in the stream, and not because they're mean or they overtalk. I mean, I just don't think they contribute at all. And jungle jargon is one of them.
Well, it was he was constantly over talking. It wasn't even because he was mean. It was just I couldn't get any words out. He would just over talk me.
Yeah, that happened to me one time. But there's people that come to these streams as well that I wouldn't let in, but I would be really mean. It wouldn't under speech. You would be welcome, by the way.
I'm in the mean club too, kind of. Maybe I'm just grouchy or something. Maybe it's grouchiness or something.
Yeah, there are people, I don't want to say it, but there are nice people that come on the stream and they just like their avatar on the video or something, and those people are not welcome on my open mics.
So you're a fan of Groucho Marx then, Brenda? Boom boom.
I'm trying to find the shows on Talk Heathen. They don't have them. Let's see, 2 days ago.
It's broken up. You have to go to the videos, and then it's several videos back. They have the episode broken up into pieces.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to. Yeah, they got it very much broken up. So, did they break your piece up?
No, I can find it really quickly if you want, but
yeah, give me a link to the video. They used to have them by date,
Okay, boomer.
Okay. Goddamn youngin', you youngins.
Were you dancing at the same time you said that, Brenda?
Episode. Let's see. Do they have episodes? They used to have Yeah, 518, 58. God, they got them all broken up. Amazing. Did somebody put it in? Are you looking, Brenda?
Yeah, I assume she is. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Season 2.
Yeah, I got it.
They're only on season 2 is 2018. Okay, you got it. Where's it? Oh, I see. Thank you. Thank you. I needed help. I need help getting out of bed, and I need help, getting up in the morning.
Yeah, Grandpa.
I need lots of help. I will put that in our description also, along with Denny's.
But Standing for Truth did not appreciate my approach.
Didn't. Oh, surprising.
Because I said right out, I don't know anything about genetics. I don't know anything about it. All I know is that the argument that you're putting forward is not a good argument. And I know a little bit about stuff here and there, and also I can quickly Google the people that he cites, and Google doesn't support what he says about them, or else they're crackpots.
Well, the difference between you and Standing for Truth on knowing something about genetics, you do share that neither of you know that much about genetics, but you admit it and he doesn't.
I asked him how. I did ask him what degrees, if any, he had, and he said he had 50 degrees.
Who did?
Standing for Truth from Harvard.
He was messing with you. He was messing with you.
He was he wouldn't answer the question.
Yeah, he wouldn't answer the question. Yeah, he has no degrees, and his knowledge of genetics is very superficial. He gets it all from AIG and Sanford and those guys. And Nathaniel Jensen did a high school biology course in the beginning of his book, Replacing Darwin, I think it was. And that is what they know. They don't know any more than that. And it drives me crazy because they don't seem to care to know more.
I probably don't know any more than that. Probably not.
Yeah, and that should be enough. And we should be able to make our case and explain why we believe in evolution to people who don't know the subject in detail. I don't know. That's kind of our job, right?
Yeah. And then the issue with Talk Heathen was basically over belief. And it was my perception that they were, and they may not have been, but it was my perception that they were sort of being dismissal of philosophy and saying it's just a bunch of beliefs. It's just things that people believe. And I think it's more than that, especially professional philosophy, and not the kind of philosophy that you see on Discord and YouTube debates. You don't see those people in there very often, right?
Well, the thing is about the ACA, Atheist Community of Austin, and new atheists in general, is you have to understand that they have developed a callus, and that callus is meant to reject the kind of barrage they get from believers, right? And part of that callus is rejecting, like if you say the word spiritual, or you say spiritual atheist, or you say philosophy, or any number of things, these guys, they've almost programmed themselves with a very strict, rational way to rebut you or rebuff you, right?
That's interesting, because I remember when I used the term new atheist, you were like, what the heck is that? What even is that term? But it seems like you do know what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess that kind of sums it up. So yeah, sometimes I'm not sure what the hell they're talking about a new atheist, but it seems like a lacktheist, which I think is a really good word. And I think they are justified in being lacktheists. And a lot of the stuff that they say they're justified, but they tend to be, I mean, they've developed this callus, and they are very powerful people, and they will hit you back too quickly. I think they punch too quickly on both those shows, Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen. And like when what the hell? God, I forgot his name. Eric Murphy and his partner, a guy, Jamie, a guy I really, really loved. When they were together, it was a better show, I think. Because
Yeah,
they
that
were
was
softer.
too bad. That was too bad. I don't
Yeah.
really remember much about that, but yeah, that was too bad that he got into trouble.
Yeah, and he got into trouble over just, I know what he was trying to do, and he just got caught in the middle. And Jamie is just a wonderful person, and so is Eric, by the way. But it just all turned out badly, and I think he disappeared as a result of that. And that was a shame because that show was really good. Those two had great chemistry, and they played off each other, and they kind of kept the balance. And then you go over to the Atheist Experience, and I think they'd just gotten too quick to reject or to present that callous rather than actually talking to the people that come on, right? But shit,
Yeah.
they get viewership. People enjoy watching that. They enjoy watching the believer get his ass handed to him. So
I don't particularly enjoy it.
I got to admit I don't. Though I do think a lot of the ACA. I mean, they're quite an organization overall. I'm not sure. I had to stop watching Atheist Experience because I wanted to listen to the callers more. I wanted to hear what the callers had to say.
Yeah, the biggest mistake they ever made, and I don't know how they could undo it or have avoided it, but is to alienate Tracy Harris. Isn't there was a
Claire?
Claire.
Jen and Claire, yeah.
And Jer. They're Godless Bitches podcast. They're the ones who originally started it. Was just so excellent in presenting things from a feminist point of view and everything. Yeah, those were the days, guys, and they're trying to bring it back. But
I definitely miss Tracy, that's for sure. She was like a laser sometimes.
Yeah, she could really think through what callers were saying and just think on her feet.
Yep. Yeah.
However,
really...
things move on, and there were several times, I think, in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years or whatever, that the atheist community has taken turns, which I personally don't agree with. But you can't stop people making their own direction. You know what I mean? Like all of that that blog stuff. I can't remember the name of the blog that Myers put up. Can you remember the name of that, Brenda? PC Myers had a blog.
Oh, Fringilla? Fringilla.
Fringilla, yeah.
But yeah, he still has it. He still has it somewhere.
Yeah, it's still out there. But they kicked the ACA out as a result of that whole fiasco. And
that's where the rot set in for me.
Oh, from Free Thought blogs? Wasn't that
that was it, Scott?
Yeah.
What was that dispute about again?
Something to do with what
trans people in sport
rules. That guy, something that he said caused a ruckus.
Yeah, atheism plus, basically. And it's like, as if nobody, as if people didn't understand before that getting atheists to agree on something is like herding cats, right? That phrase had been thrown around the community for enough time before that for them to be able to understand. I mean, I am a hard atheist. I believe I make the positive claim there are no God or gods, but I don't disagree that people have the rights to believe in lacktheism or soft atheism, as I call it.
But around that time, people, the quote unquote skeptic atheists, were sort of moving towards the alt-right and becoming racist and homophobic.
I don't know about that. That's a stretch.
They are now. Well, they are now. Take a look at.
That's a stretch.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think you're being extremely uncharitable with and reading into people's reading people's intentions as if they're concrete, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I'm sure some are. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not the case that some atheists are racist. I'm sure that there are some, just in any group, you know. And I decry racism and homophobia just as much as the next person. But I don't think it's necessarily true that atheism is anything to do with that. That's my problem. When they tried to add all this extra shit on top of atheism, it's like, well, that's not what atheism is for me. I'm a humanist. That's why I believe that, you know, I'm not homophobic and I'm not racist, because I'm a humanist. And if they're not humanists, well, fair enough. Then there's something else, and that's okay. We'll dispute that, and I'll decry them for the lack of compassion, if you like. But I'm not going to say it's anything to do with atheism.
Well, no, I don't think it does either.
Okay, that's good.
I just think that there was a split.
Well, no, those guys in Austin got caught between just in a really interesting place and a difficult place for a YouTube channel, and they responded as best they could, and it turned out to be very wrong. You know, the response just split the community in half, and what they should have done is just distance themselves entirely from the controversy, and just admitted that, you know, we're in over our heads, guys. We don't know what the hell to do here. And that's kind of what happened with them.
Well, it's fair. Again, personally, it comes down to, it's not to do with atheism. They should have said, look, the reason
exactly.
Homophobia is not because I'm an atheist, it's because I'm a humanist, or whatever view they wish to take that is against that.
Yeah, well, as it turned out, it split their community in half, because it was just such a fuzzy area, and it had nothing to do with atheism, and nobody knew how to respond. And they just sort of said, look, guys, we're in over our heads. We don't know what the hell to do here. We're sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry. We're not going to, we're going to leave it alone. And unfortunately, they went one way, then they went the other way, and it just was a mess. But yeah, and I feel, but they are a wonderful group of people. If you go out there and hang out with them on their bat crews, what they do in the community, and what they do overall, they're just wonderful people.
Yeah,
and I will not judge them for what happened to them, any of them. In fact, I was with one side, Claire Waldner, and we were walking past the Atheist Experience, having a chat about the other side, and I just didn't take a side. I like them all. I mean, I loved them all, and I loved them together. Really was a bitch. It was a sad thing. That's why there are certain topics that I just kick out of this channel, because I don't want to end up between the same rock and the hard place, right? Yeah. It's just like some shit we just can't address, right? I don't know.
Well, we can't address it as atheism, and that's my point. If they'd come just straight out and said, look, we're also a humanist organization, and these are our humanist beliefs, and this means we are against homophobia and transphobia and whatever else, okay? And that's cool, because that then opens up another discussion about humanism, which is fantastic. All right, but to say that we're kicking you out because you can't, because it's about atheism, that just seems ridiculous to me. Anyway, I felt guilt. I felt bad about it, because it then led into this idea of Atheism Plus, or not led into it, but the idea came from Atheism Plus, which I always thought was just a dumb idea to put a plus on the end of atheism. It seems problematic, just because atheists can't agree on, what fucking time of day it is, let alone what we're disagreeing about.
Yep.
So there you go.
So do we want to shoot this thing in the head so we can?
We do, because I gotta go make dinner and.
Okay, later.
Okay, guys. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Goodbye, cruel world.
I'm leaving you today.
Yes. Wow.